Welcome to episode 21 of the Parallel Physiques podcast. Today we are joined by Lexi Lanphear, one of Kenneth's clients who has a fascinating story. You're going to love this. We talk through everything she's been through, what brought her to coaching, what big idea she wanted, and what light bulb moment happened for her. She walks us through the whole process, where she's at right now and where she's planning to go. Welcome to the podcast. This is an exciting one. Get out your pen and paper. You may want to take notes. And now, welcome to episode 21. Welcome, everyone. We are exploring episode 21 today with Lexi Lanphear. She is a client of Kenneth's, so he wanted to bring her on today and discuss their relationship, where they've come, where they're going, and the importance of her story. Lexi, we are so excited to have you on today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I was like, oh, I feel honored.
I was thinking about it
It's
when I was getting ready to do the podcast, because I always give Kenneth a hard time because he literally, I mean, look at him. If you can't see him, listeners, he's got
I'm
this
homeless. I look
t-shirt.
homeless.
Yeah, he's a homeless dude with a cap on, whatever, and he literally rolls into the show like with his, if he had hair on fire from whatever he was doing. And I'm like, you got to give me a half an hour to get my hair done. I put the makeup on. Like, we should have a green room before this, just so we can prepare.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand feeling a little anxious about being on the show, but man, we are so excited to have you here.
No, I'm super excited, especially just with the way things have changed in the past like week or so, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
I'll say this too, just to tack on to what Laura was just saying. This is just a conversation. It's just you and me talking. You don't have to be 100% vulnerable because there are other people listening. But at the end of the day, you just feel comfortable. You talk about what you want to talk about. And I think you have a story that is impactful, that can help other people. And I think all three of us on this podcast want to help other people. And that's really why I had you come on, because you, in your own very stubborn way, have decided to go against the grain and follow everything that I've asked you to do. And it's, unfortunately, like, say I have 45, 50 clients, whatever it is, there's about I don't know, 15% of you guys that will literally do whatever it is that I say. The rest of everybody else, it's sort of a gradient scale, and we have varying different results and stuff like that. And it's not like people aren't successful when they don't follow what I'm saying 100%, but it's it's crazy impactful when I see the the progress that you've made in the last 6 months. You're not even the same human. So
no.
anyway, so start off kind of like where you were, um, and I think it was Dahlia that recommended you to
Yeah.
me, and maybe
Yeah.
talk about that conversation, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I remember I had reached out to Dahlia. I was just like, I am not doing okay. Like, I'm having suicidal thoughts. I knew I wasn't going to act on them, but I knew like I wasn't in a good place. I knew I needed help. And it was like everything I was trying to do just wasn't working. So I remember I reached out to Dahlia and I was looking at Matt Cusano, and she was like, well, look, she was like, I know Kenneth. And I'd never even heard of Kenneth. I'd never even heard of you. And she was like, just have a conversation. She was like, I think he's a perfect fit for you. I know you, I know him. And I remember we got on, I messaged you
Yep.
and we got on the call. And I think it was like 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it was.
I'm walking outside in Lake Toxaway, this beautiful lake, but I've been isolated for 6 months, like from everyone. And man, I was just in so much pain and I felt heard. I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember you listened to me, but also how calm your voice was. And I knew right then, I was like, he will help me. Like he will actually help me and he cares to help me. Um, and I think it was like what, a couple months after is when we finally like I pulled the trigger,
Yeah. Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
you had to get some things squared away, I guess, financially and stuff. But I think, from my perspective that day, I remember I was walking around um, my living room and I thought, you know, this girl's going to be a challenge. You were gonna, you were a new, it was a new situation because I'd never really had somebody sort of in a mental place that you were in, and I wasn't gonna say no, I can't help you. It was gonna be let's see if she has the ability to tackle this mental health side first, because if without that we won't make any progress at all. You'll literally just fail, week after week after week, and then eventually you just quit. And so, in my mind, I thought, okay, well, we've got to get some testing done and stuff, eventually. But I really just need to get her on just a basic habit tracker, which, this over here, Laura, is like the queen of the habit tracker. She's the one that made my habit tracker. And, she's got this incredible way about taking women in particularly and meeting them where they are and allowing them to kind of gradually get to where we need them to go. And I learned that from her. I mean, usually the dynamic of our relationship is she's running something past me and I'm either confirming that she's right or she's never run into this situation and she needs some help. So, as much as she doubts herself sometimes, she's actually coaching me too while I'm coaching her. And at the end of the day, I knew that with you. I was like, I'm just going to baby step this girl. So when you finally said, let's go, what did I tell you? I was like, I'm not gonna put you on a meal plan, right? And you kind of lost
I
your shit.
freaked out. I freaked out. I remember, oh my God, that's so funny. I remember I'm outside, my parents had came up to the mountain house, and I'm like, Mom, you're gonna have to go to the grocery store with me. I mean, I freaked out. I was like, what do you mean? I mean, I had this rush of anxiety that just consumed my body. I was just like, I don't know what you're like, what are you saying right now? That does
well,
not make sense.
so one of the things that I knew is that you were a competitor. You've had coaches before. You know generally how to meal prep and what to do. And so, what did I ask you to do? I just said eat intuitively. I
Yeah.
want you to enjoy yourself to some degree, and also just try to eat enough food. And you were like intuitively. I don't even know how to do that. And I was like, yeah, you do. You do it when you have a coach. You're just following the plan. Just whatever was in the plan before, just sort of do that thing. And you were like, what? And so, I just was like, I don't even know if I don't know if she'll make it, but I'm going to force her to do this. And,
Hey, can we put a pause on this for just 1 second?
yeah, yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that you're talking about your struggles initially, but I'm wondering, Lexi, if we could just rewind just a hair, if you would be willing
Yeah.
to share. You talked about the fact that the reason you were looking to reach out to someone is because you were really struggling, and so you were going to reach out to Matt, and then you reached out to Kenneth. Can you kind of help our listeners understand what you're struggling with? Because I don't know if people are looking on YouTube, whatever, because we're on YouTube, just in case everybody needs to know
Yeah.
that. But you look like, right? And this is where a lot of people come from is someone might walk up to you and be like, how could you be struggling? You have this gorgeous long hair and you're beautiful, you don't have wrinkles, and you're thin and you're lovely. And how could you be struggling, Lexi? Come on.
Yeah. So I mean, well, we kind of got to rewind a little bit further, It was a couple years back, and I mean, really after I competed, I struggled with binge eating terribly. I'm in recovery for substance abuse, and so it was like, I have that aspect, right, of like my mental health that I have to work on and, be diligent with. And but it was like I was obsessively working in a career field that does not benefit me. That is not like my true self. And that will go into more later on how I
And we kind of
realized
talked
that.
about that too when we first started. Um, she's working in insurance, and I was like, this girl does not need to work in insurance. That's what I was thinking in my head. I was like, this doesn't seem like this is a good fit for her. And so, to talk about what you were talking about, Laura, I mean, I think what I see with my girls is, man, there is nobody better than a damn foundry girl who can fucking fake it. I mean, they fake it with the best of them. I mean, like you can meet them all and you have no idea that they have insecurities or troubles or whatever, because they're all these type A people they're tough. They have this tough outer skin, but they are like the ooeyest, gooeyest people on the inside. Does that sound familiar, Laura? Because I think I might have just labeled you.
I don't know what
But
you're talking about.
so I don't know if it's because I'm the person that I am and that's what I attract. But if I had a Foundry Girl party, it'd be a shit show. It'd be a shit show. Like I don't like I there would have to be parental guidance. Like there would have to be some sort of chaperone, because before the end of the night, the ice cream's coming out and everybody's going to be talking about their feelings, and they're all eating ice cream, and it's going to be the worst cheat meal ever made, and it's
I
just going
think
to be
that sounds
terrible.
amazing. I don't know, Lexi, what do
That
you
sounds
think?
pretty accurate. Right? That's like spot on.
Because everyone that I work with has, to some degree, dealt with some sort of eating type disorder. Laura has been in that boat too. So, there's some tendencies, I think there's some traumas that are consistent with the individuals that I work with, which end up drawing out the same outcomes a lot of the time. But for whatever reason, you were probably one of the worst shape that I've ever had. And just from a stability standpoint, like you just felt like you were super unstable in general. And for me, I think even with Laura, as a coach, we need stability in your life to be able to create the plans, because if you're stable, then the plan is easier to follow. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I can't throw anything at her that's going to be just overly stimulating, but I'm going to force her to be uncomfortable with where she is, because what causes change? Being uncomfortable. If you're
Yeah.
not uncomfortable, you're not going to change. Or you can shut down. So that's what I was really trying to find out. Is she going to shut down on me, or is she going to start to change? And what'd you do?
I changed.
Yeah. Yeah. How long
So
did I keep you in that purgatory? It wasn't that long, right?
no, it was like a month.
Yeah.
And then I remember, God, that week was so terrible. It was fight or flight mode all week. I was not functioning. I was not hungry. I was not trained. I was just like, I was frozen. Um, I just remember there was so much anxiety. And I talked to my parents about moving back. And I had this like idea wrapped around like still like,
But why were you moving back? Who told you to move
because you told me to move back. So like, Kenneth said, move back home. And so I sat on it. I think for like what we
back?
talked on I remember we talked on a Tuesday, and I think it was Friday. I sent you a text because I was getting on the highway, and I said,
Yeah, you were driving
hey,
home. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, just want to let you know. Thought about our conversation Tuesday. I packed all my shit up. I'm
And the
heading to
reason why I had
Wilmington.
her move home was because financially you need stability. You needed some sort of community around you that was going to take care of you, because you were isolated in the mountains. You were struggling with that job. And so if I knew that I could get you home, we all have our family struggles and our, the weird dynamics and stuff. And I didn't really understand any of that because we hadn't had that conversation. And it's turned out to be probably the best move you could have made for the time being. And what I had to tell you was, Lexi, you're not quitting on your goals or your career or your life. This is literally just slowing down to speed up. And sometimes, I had a mentor in my business career that I was I had lots of employees at the time, and I had this sales goal that we had to hit, and I felt like I was the only one pulling the weight, and I felt like we were just right there at the cusp of this goal every single month, but we weren't consistently easily hitting it like I was used to. And so I was bitching and complaining to this guy. His name was Mark Barr. Mark goes, Kenneth, there's two things. One, they call it work and not sex because it's not any fun. And then he told me, sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. And what he meant was I had to slow down my process. I had to get everybody else on board so that we could move the Titanic in the right direction. Probably a bad joke for the last week, but it was literally the ship had to move, and I had to have everybody on board to be able to do that. And I had to slow down long enough to let everyone know what their role was, what they had to execute so that we could move forward without, stopping the boat. And so I knew, and what else did I tell you? I said, talk to your parents, tell them what we're doing because they need to understand what we're doing. And as soon as you did that, all like you started being more stable. You remember like that next week, I was like, hey girl, what's going on? And you were like, I'm pretty good over here. But yeah, and you've had ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of where it got us. And so at this point, I don't even think you weren't balled in, were you at that point? Or you were sort of blindly following me. You weren't like,
Yeah,
let's
I
go,
no,
let's follow Kenneth to the death, let's fucking go.
it's crazy because I remember just being like realizing I had to let go of control. Now I kept trying to take it back and fight it because that's just like who I am. But I
Hmm.
remember just like I was like, I'm letting him direct my life because like I'm not functioning. I'm not living. I'm existing. I'm a shell of a person. And I don't know what else to do. But like my
Yeah,
way has gotten me to where I'm at and I can't do this. Like I can't do it my
yeah,
way anymore. You know, so
yeah.
that's kind of where I was at, where I was just like, you know what, just tell me. I mean, I moved to Wilmington. I moved back in with my parents, you know.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was I was glad that I did that though. Like looking back, I'm like, holy crap. That was the best move I could have made. And at the time, it was the most defeating feeling.
Because you felt like you were just giving up on you. But you had to stop doing what you were doing because that's what was actually stealing you of who you were. And I was just like, okay, we got to like redirect this girl's whole thought process. So to stop here for a second, there's probably people listening that are like, the fuck are we doing here? Like, this doesn't sound like coaching. This doesn't sound like nutrition, nutrition coaching or bodybuilding coaching or anything like that. But, I just had a call with another client. He's 5 weeks out from USA's. And, um, the thing is, if I don't have everybody mentally stable, then every bit of the progress that we hope to make won't happen. And it's taken what me and Laura, how long has it taken us to kind of grab a hold of the fact that if the mind isn't going in the right direction, the body, follows. And, would you say it's probably in the last year we've kind of come to really see evidence of that? Or do you feel like it's been longer?
No, you know what? I think I think that's like a two-part answer to that, right? Is we've always known there was something going on. Like, like I've been doing this for, I don't know, upwards of 7 years. You've been doing it for just as long. And,
Yeah.
you start out and you do the basics because you know what you know to help people and you get them to a point, and then everybody plateaus and you're like, what the heck is going on? I don't get it. So probably within the last year is when we really started digging in and understanding that the mental piece, like, I mean, everybody should understand you cannot disconnect your brain from your body, right? If you want your body to look a certain way, your brain's got to be right there with it because your brain's the one that tells the body what to do. Um, So I think probably in the last, yeah, I think it's probably been the last
Do
year
you
that
do
our
you think it has to do with my own issues that I've brought to the table?
no,
I think it
you know
does.
what?
I think it does.
I think it's, you know, it's, you are a good example to, in the moment, like right there to go, okay, you're going through this and this is how you're dealing with it. But then to like compare and watch other people and just take that knowledge. And that's what we do, right? We take the knowledge that we have and we apply it to other people and we see how it fits. And so
Right.
to be able to do that and go, yeah, this person, we all have our shit, right? We all have our traumas.
Hmm.
And I was just talking to a client the other day and she's like, oh, but you know, my issue not as bad as whomever X, right? And
Hmm.
so I shouldn't feel why. And I'm like, no, because everybody is this different person and our trauma is our trauma, and it feels the same. My trauma to me feels the same as your trauma feels to you.
Exactly.
We can't compare it. We just have to figure it out, and we have to find a way to be better and to feel
Yeah.
better. And yeah, every client, every single one now is like, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Right?
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like when we started on this functional health journey. Laura and I we kind of started learning the same stuff at the same time. It's interesting how God works. It's like He just plopped her next to me and was like, "Hey, you guys are going to ride on the same ride for a while until you just decide that you're going to talk to each other." And
Mm.
so eventually, the smarter you get in the space from a functional perspective, the more you realize everybody you talk to is really messed up, and you like they all have functional health issues, and like it's literally the most common thing in the world. And then you start recognizing that there's like groups of people. There's like four types of people, and everybody kind of falls in these four types of people, and it's usually trauma related, personality related, like these life experiences that have come along. And you can say, well, I have five Lexis. They're all on a gradient scale of health, but I have five girls that you could probably just be best fucking friends with because you're just alike. Now I don't want that to happen because boy, that sounds like a nightmare on Elm Street, because you guys are just gonna all like it'll be like gremlins. You just multiply. It's just gonna be like freaking crazy. So then there's other people that I have, similar, have similar aspects about who these people are. Like, for example, Ryan Farida and Paulin. They're both two of my very top athletes. There are some very significant similarities with these guys. There are some significant differences, but they have they have a skill set that is incredible along with their genetics, and they have similar thought processes, similar interactions. So when you do this for long enough, you can start seeing the similarities across the board. And so you start to understand, yeah, okay, there's protocols in place, but there's nuances. That's why protocols just don't work with everybody. Like I can't take the same gut protocol that I put Laura on and put you on it and expect it to work. So you have to know the individual and coach to that individual. And that's really what my mentor was saying. He was saying, not only do you need to slow down and pay attention, but you have to slow down before you speed up with everyone else, because everyone that's in your charge, everyone that you're leading requires something different of you. And if I don't give that to that person, they're not going to be able to be successful for the whole team to be successful. And
Well,
so when I looked at you,
I think
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
difficult. I think it's difficult from the client perspective, right, Lexi? I mean, you can speak to this, is when you're that type A person to have someone tell you to slow down and stop, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what?
we're still
What do
talking
you mean?
about
I'm like, let's fucking go. And he's
yeah.
like, no, no, no. And
Mm,
then I remember like there were so many times. I mean, I still struggle with it, where I'm like, I just want to go. But I think now it's like I've seen when I look over the past couple years and like previous coaches, that's all it's been.
yeah.
And that's why I'm at where I've been at. That's why I'm going through what I'm going through, is because I haven't slowed down. I haven't looked in the mirror like we were talking about earlier. I've neglected all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and in return, my body has said, F you,
Yeah.
like you haven't been healing the internal. So, and it shows,
Yeah.
it's proof that, and just looking at my mindset from like even a couple weeks ago, Kenneth, we were talking on the phone and he was like, delete the word failure from your vocabulary, because that's all I felt. And that's all I said to myself. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm failing in life, you know? And you say that enough and you believe that. And then nothing was improving whatsoever.
Nothing ever.
Nothing, nothing.
Like the
Metabolism.
check, like the check-ins were almost like, why are we even doing check-ins? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on here?
That's kind of how because nothing was changing at all. My weight wasn't changing, nothing. My
Yeah.
sleep, everything, my anxiety. Um,
And you had
And
and
ebbs and
wait,
flows.
this is really important, so I want us to highlight this part. Nothing was changing. Your check-ins were the same. What did you do? So, why did that happen and what did you do to make that change? Because I guarantee you, if we have, God bless, if we have 10,000 people listening to this right now, they're sitting at home, honestly, and they're saying to themselves, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Nothing is changing.
Right.
So dig in.
yeah,
What
yeah,
was not change? Why wasn't it changing? And what did you guys do? I think this is going to be huge for people right here.
So you talk
yeah.
about why I wasn't changing, Lexi, and I'll pick up the ball on what I did.
Okay. It wasn't changing because my mental headspace was not there. It just I was constantly feeding myself negative. It was negative input, negative input. Um,
Can you give some
it was
examples of that?
so like obsessively thinking about like my body. My body looks like crap. I don't look good. I'm fat, ill. Who would want to be with me? And then it's like isolating from others. Then I was binge eating. Like I would be alone for 48 hours and I would end up binge eating. And then I'm like upset with myself and guilt and shame. And it was just like, and I would tell Kenneth afterwards, but I felt like crap, and it was just this cycle. I was still going through the same cycle that I'd been doing
Hmm.
before. Um, but I'd talk to myself in the worst way you could possibly talk to yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I was beating myself up with a baseball bat all day long,
Yeah.
and that's all I thought about was me and my insecurities and where I'm failing at in life, and I have no purpose. Like that was all I thought about all the time. And then it was like I'm gonna excessively train, and it would be like 10 o'clock, 10:30, I'm getting out of the gym after working all day exhausted. And it just nothing was happening.
Yeah.
So my mental headspace was just not, it was still very negative.
And so I'm going to pick up the ball. Uh, we would have one good week, and then we'd have a really fucking bad week, and it would just be. I mean, Lexi has been the least fun roller coaster I've ever been on. It has just been not fun because the lows were really, really, really low. The highs were like, yeah. I mean, you're at the top of the roller coaster. You're like, yeah, this is the best day. And then it's low. This is the worst. And so what I had to realize was, okay, we've got to somehow stabilize this. And the only way I can do it is consistently talk to her on the phone. Because when I talk to her on the phone, she can see what's going on. I'm being the mirror as a coach. I'm saying, hey Lexi, look how crazy you are today. Right? So in the kindest of ways. I mean, I'm saying that in a joking way, but like I would, in the
Yeah.
kindest of ways, and I think you can probably, I don't know, agree with this. I have this really special way of like kicking you in the ass, but telling you that I love you at the same time. I don't, it's a gift. I don't know where I got it from. Laura has a similar gift with me, and I'm thankful for it. So, what I would say is, um, this goes back a little bit to my history. So Lexi was doing what I was doing, the lowest of lows. Like, and when I would get back up a little bit, when I would have a good day, it wouldn't last long, right, Laura? Like I might have a really good day. I'd get really excited about something. And then all of a sudden the next day you'd be like, you okay? What are you crying about? We had a good day yesterday. What's going on?
Yeah.
And it was just a roller coaster ride. It was fucking terrible. And so at one point in time, I was talking to a friend and I was just in a very, very bad place. And he said, I ran across this guy who's a shaman and he is affiliated with this Native American church. And he does these ceremonies, these healing ceremonies. And I think it's worth having a conversation with this guy to do this. And so I had the conversation with the guy, and it was very out of left field for me. And it's funny too, like if I've heard the story that like psychedelics find you, you don't find psychedelics, and that's exactly the case. And so I'm finding myself walking in the woods with this guy to lay down on a blanket and to smoke something that I've never ever smoked before. And I sure as hell have no idea how it's going to affect me. But I do know Joe Rogan and all of these other professionals on these podcasts are telling me that this psychedelic drug could be the key to unlocking the trauma, the repetitive negative thoughts or whatever. And so the science behind it is you have the amygdala, which is in sort of the center portion of your brain. It's like the reptilian part of your brain. Arousal happens there. Fight or flight happens there. Your trauma, your looping thoughts. So all of your looping thoughts about your body and having to do more and all that stuff, that's where all that's stored. And there's other ways to heal this, but sometimes when you find somebody that's so low, the journey's going to be so long that that's so daunting in your mind that you need something to just have relief to be able to get up the next day. And that's really where I was. I was going to counseling. Counseling's great. I'm not going to discount it. But talk therapy is a very slow process in unraveling trauma. So my talk therapist told me we need to do EMDR. Well, EMDR is where they bilaterally stimulate your brain. You can look from left to right, or you can tap your knees from left to right. And even the way it was made was you're walking down the street without headphones in. What are you doing? You're looking from left to right. You're enjoying nature. And so the inventor of EMDR, that's where it started. They realized every time I take a walk, my anxiety goes down. So everyone that I program that you need to take a walk in the morning, take your fucking walk, please, because you probably need it for your mental health. That was just a PSA announcement. So I will also say uh, it's scary to do EMDR because you don't know what you're going to uncover. And so it was very slow in the process. And I'm very much a person like, well, if we're going to rip the Band-Aid off, you better yank that motherfucker because I want to get through this. So I go into the woods with this guy and I smoke 5-MeO DMT. It was about 18 minutes long. And when I woke up, I had processed through a significant amount of trauma that happened to me throughout that particular year. I had kind of set my intentions before I did the ceremony to work through this one particular thing. And when I woke up, I was kind of confused as to whether it worked or not, but I did have an emotional release. And what I didn't know at the time is your body and your mind are connected, and for you to be able to process trauma, you actually have to have emotional release. That's that physical portion. So if you don't have that emotional release, more than likely you haven't processed through the trauma the way that you need to process through the trauma. Well, Laura, you can speak to what happened the next week. What did you see in me?
Oh, you were a very different person. Your lows, you weren't low. Not like you
Mm,
were. I mean, it was frightening
right.
how low you were when you were low. And Lexi, I would assume that's probably what your experience was too, is that when you're low, you were low,
It
it was
was
frightening.
bad.
Yeah. And Kenneth's, I mean, he wasn't like flying high, everything was great, but there wasn't the despair. There wasn't despair.
Right.
There was normal, yeah, I'm melancholy, I'm struggling with this, but it wasn't the scary despair that it had been.
And I was eating,
And you were
and I was sleep, and I was sleeping, and I was actually working.
yeah.
I had stopped working, I had stopped eating, I'd stopped sleeping, and so I have all these experiences, right? Like this is what's been my journey, and what I've realized was you were exactly where I was, and I was like, well, there's only one way out of this that I know of, and so I suggested this Native American ceremony with the shaman, and I actually suggested it earlier on.
Yeah.
Um, it was probably like in that first conversation that we had,
Yeah.
and it's just like every time I have this type of conversation, when I talk about psychedelic drugs and things like that, there's a scary connotation to it because if you were born anywhere close to the 80s and 90s, like you watch these videos at school where people do psychedelic drugs and they're jumping out of a three-story window, and they're dying, and that is not what this is, and it's also under supervision with a professional and all that stuff. So um, it there's a really negative connotation, and then you take on top of that, people realize they're going to have to deal with their trauma, and they don't know what they're going to see, they don't know what they're going to do, they have no idea how they're going to respond. It's the unknown that's scary. So when I bring it up, I kind of just bring it up and let it marinate, and then eventually you came around and you were like, I think I need to do this. And so we set it up for what, not this weekend, this past weekend, but the weekend before.
Yeah.
Lexi, can you
And
speak a little bit to what Kenneth is talking about for you? Like what were your thoughts when he brought it up and things like that?
yeah,
Yeah. So I remember it was probably the first conversation we had that you had brought it up. And like being in recovery with substance abuse, of course, it's not like the first option, like it's actually, and so talking about this is kind of, I wouldn't say scary. I know there's going to be judgment behind it,
yeah,
people that know me that are in recovery, but it's also for me, it's like, I did medication. You know what I'm saying? I've been doing therapy for almost 6 years now, like consistently. Um,
yeah,
I've done all of these things and nothing has worked. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not getting better. And
yes,
so the first time when Kenneth brought it up, I remember I talked to my sponsor, which is someone in a 12-step program. And I said, hey, like, I'm thinking about this. I'm going to talk to other people. Like, kind of, what do you think about this?
yes,
Like, um, and so I kind of did my own research. I talked to other people. Like you said, I let it marinate, and I think it was like that last check in or that last conversation. You called me and he said, how's it going? I was like, I don't know. I don't know because it was just, I was so hollow. The only way I can describe what I was feeling was like, I am in a loop every single day doing the same thing, obsessing about my steps, obsessing about when I'm going to like eat my next meal or how I'm going to figure out with training. Like it was just, I was not living.
hmm,
And when Kenneth finally like brought it up again, I was like, okay, because like I needed some form of hope, like it
yes,
was like my last shot of hope, and
yep,
to just get better in some way, to change my trajectory, in life. Um, because I just didn't feel like I was like, I'd rather go back to using than to live like I'm living,
right,
because it felt like active addiction. I felt hollow. and empty inside. So that's like where I finally was just like, okay, like I'm ready. I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but like I can't do this anymore. Cause Laura, you talked about despair. Like that's how it felt, like every
I,
day.
I want to pause here and I kind of circle back around to like the 12-step program and sort of the addiction recovery and all that. Um, I actually have a lot of people that I've worked with that have been addicts, and I don't want to discount the word addict because
Yeah.
that is significant. But I also, what I tend to find is when all of you addicts get in one room and you talk about the 12-step program, you all want to stay in this like addictive community, and you kind like if someone wants to go explore something to heal themselves, everybody's like, hey, no, that's not on the plan, you got to come back here, that's crazy, don't do that, you got to come back. And then next thing you know, you're sort of still an addict all the time. And so I don't want to air anybody's dirty laundry, but one of my most popular athletes is an addict, or was. And to watch them change, what they really did, what really changed them the most was it was actually disassociating with that term
Hmm.
and realizing that they don't have to be involved in that community all the time. They don't have to give back because what happens is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have to sponsor someone else and there's a sponsor and all the sponsors, and so you're giving all the time, and maybe that's the way it works. But the issue is the reason why you're hollow is because you're abandoning yourself from your own needs. And what I've been trying to make you realize is I want you to stop abandoning yourself. And when people do that, that's, it's absolutely um it's absolutely just disheartening because I can bring someone to the water, but I can't make them drink it, right? And that's the same thing with all of this addiction stuff. It's like you can't force people into recovery, and you can't keep them there either. You have to trust that they have the tools that they need to move on and grow and get better. And so, I'm really glad that the conversation with your sponsor went well, because I don't think if it didn't, then I don't think he would be here. But you
Not,
can tell me.
yeah, I'm not really sure. I think, see, my sponsor, like the calls that you would get, when Kenneth and I would talk and they were, I'm crying generally. If it wasn't a good phone call, I was generally crying at the end because I was just that's where I was at. But I just remember for months I was calling my sponsor like twice a week, breaking down. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. I'm not the same person. I don't mentally feel okay. I feel like I need to go into a fucking psych ward. Like that's how I
Yes.
felt. Um, so I think I wanted her approval, but at the same time, I was already in a space where I was just like, this is literally my last shot. Like I don't know what else to do. This is the only hope I have. And
Yep.
that's kind of where I was at with that. But it was
So
nice.
you don't have to get into the nitty gritty details. What were you going to say, Laura? Were
No,
you going to say something?
I find it rather interesting. So coming from a background like my dad was an alcoholic forever and ever, a very abusive alcoholic, and he stopped drinking, and but he didn't stop the behaviors, right? He
Mm,
didn't stop being, quote, an alcoholic, because all of those things were still there, even though he
Yes.
wasn't actively drinking, because he never went through a program. He never figured his shit out. And so when I heard you say, which was, I think, just so powerful, anyway, it was powerful to me for you to say you were in this space where even though you weren't in an active addiction, it felt exactly the same. And that makes sense because there was, to me it makes sense because of where I grew up, right? Is to hear you say that is to validate me as a person, seeing my dad do that and
Yes.
mm,
knowing that that is the truth of it, is you can go through those things and you can try to do all those things, but sometimes there's still that piece that hasn't been fixed. So I
Right.
just wanted to
Yeah.
point that out and say, like, that is amazing, and thank you so much for being vulnerable and courageous to say that, because to say that you felt that way even though there wasn't anything traditionally that you could attach it to really shows that you've made such a huge um, connection with yourself. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Kenneth, what were you?
So,
Yeah.
so what I was going to say was, so now we're getting ready for the ceremony, right?
Yeah.
And I see you post on social media 2 water bottles. And the water bottles are part of the ceremony where you're getting rid of the old and you're kind of, you're getting the new. It's just symbolic of like trying to walk into the ceremony with intentions of healing yourself, coming out on the other side and being better. Whatever it could be. It could be, you want to work on your relationship with your mother or your father or whatever. And, when I've walked into these ceremonies, I've had, you know, various traumas, and, my counselors tell me that I've got significant life experiences, almost like I'm an 80-year-old man. And so I'm like, okay, well, I know what's in front of me. There's a table of shit in front of me. I'm going to focus on that table, and then I'm going to go into it. And what I found is, uh, through the medicine, the it's almost like God cracks your brain open and literally takes a flip book of all of your trauma, and he flips it all, and he's like, yeah, you see this from a third party perspective. You're not emotionally invested in this, in seeing it. It's like you're kind of above it, and you see all the trauma from a third party perspective, and you look at it with empathy. Not only empathy for yourself, but empathy for the person that actually did it to you. And so you start to understand the why and behind why. Well, my dad did this to me. And well, then you realize, well, my dad was just human. He was doing the best he could. Or
Mhm.
my ex girlfriend did this to me. And you just realize you're like, well, she's human too. And she was doing the best she could. And she had this trauma. And this is how this, transpired. And so I've woken up three different times from this ceremony with lots of different takeaways. And I wouldn't be the coach I am today if it wasn't for these medicines. I do feel like it's a significant life changing thing. And, the shaman that we both were under, I spoke with him the other day, and he's headed to Arizona to work with a Native American tribe with an entire group of Marines. It's like 100
Wow.
Marines, and they're going to heal these Marines of their PTSD. And that is why I'm talking about this. It's such a significant thing that is kind of catching fire, that even the pharmaceutical industry is looking for ways to sort of take these medicines, these plant medicines, and make them into a drug. And I think there's probably some negative things going on there with the pharmaceutical industry because they're more money driven. But in the big scheme of things, um, you know, I want to talk about it because I see what it's done for you. I see what it's done for other clients. You're not the only client that's done it. And honestly, you and one other individual are similar. And if neither one of you have done it, I might be in the funny farm with a straitjacket. I mean, it was just a lot, It was just like I don't know what's going on, but I think I want you to kind of speak to what your experience was and kind of how you came out of it. I mean, I remember you texting me and being like, "Bruh, like
Yeah.
I'll get, I'll get back, I'll get back to you tomorrow, but thank you." So, so maybe break down what you were thinking.
Yeah. So I kind of want to, like, a real quick summary. I have had trauma from sexual abuse. You know what I'm saying? Physical abuse, emotional abuse, years ago, and then even while in recovery. I've
Yeah.
lost someone that I loved in recovery. So, like, even in recovery, and then before that, I've had all this trauma that I've worked on. But then in recovery, I've developed new traumas as well. So, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of PTSD that was coming in the way, like getting in the way of me moving forward. You know what I'm saying? Um, so I just kind of wanted to, because we talk about PTSD, but everyone probably hasn't even heard. Like, there's been quite a bit of trauma in my life that has kind of led me to this point. But yeah, so you said, like, talk about my process or kind of what happened after. Um,
Well, talk about too, just like the experience, like when you were under the influence of the medication, particularly the 5-MeO DMT, what did that feel like? Can you explain to the audience, like, you know,
yeah,
even before you were about to do the medication, kind of where your mind was? Were you fearful? Were you not?
yeah.
And then what happened once you were under it?
Yeah, so when it was a Sunday, it was actually Father's Day. Um and I went and I set my intentions. I didn't know what I was going to experience. I was, of course, a little nervous, like, I haven't put a substance in my body in almost 6 years. Like, this is
Sure.
crazy. And but I was just, like, so open about it. I was like, if this, like, frees me of something, great. And so I remember when I was under, it's so funny. You had told me you're going to try and fight it because that's who you are. And
Yep.
you said, let it fucking go. Like, just, and so I remember the whole thing. I don't know if people are aware
That's
of that, but
that's that's
you
congruent. Yeah.
remember, yeah, you remember everything. It's not like you're like, "Oh, I don't, it's not like you went out and got blackout drunk or something. You
Yeah.
remember everything, the whole process. Um, and I remember trying to fight it because, of course, at one point visually I'm seeing stuff. I have my eyes closed, but I'm seeing, and when I was fighting it, everything got dark and scary, and when I would
Mhm.
let go, I remember seeing, like, a bright white light is the way that I describe it.
That's
It was just
exactly
like,
that's the way it exactly happened to me
yeah.
too. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so I remember when at the end of it, I'm sitting up, and I did not cry. I wailed, like, scream cried, like, in waves. And I remember the shaman asking me, or telling me, he was like, you don't have to be suicidal anymore. And it took me a second to process that, because I was like, yeah, January. But then I realized this has been going on for months. I
Hmm.
didn't know what my purpose was. So I didn't understand why I was alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, after all the shit I've put myself through, all the experiences in active addiction, why did God choose me to live? I don't even know what my purpose is. So those were all the thoughts I was having while being under with Kenneth, like, and I didn't recognize that until he said that to me. And it was just a release of all this pain that I'd felt for years. I mean, and it just kept coming and coming until I couldn't cry anymore. I couldn't scream anymore. And afterwards, it was like I could fucking breathe. Like, all of that was done. Everything, all the pain that I had felt, and just the trauma alone, um it was like released. It was just this huge weight that was finally lifted, that I had been working on in therapy for years and just couldn't seem to get past it. It was just like
Hmm.
I was stuck. um and so afterwards, I was still, like, somewhat out of it. It took me a second to come back, and I I actually went and stayed at Dahlia's house, that
Hmm.
that night. And the first thing she said to me, and she was like, "Holy shit, I have never seen you so relaxed and look happy." Like, she was just like, "You look like a different person." And
Hmm.
so I was like, and I'm like, "Yeah, well, I still kind of feel out of it. So maybe we'll talk tomorrow more about it, you know?" So I don't know if that like answers your question, but that was just kind of my experience. I didn't know, I knew my intention was like very open. I had like a few intentions, but I was just open in that sense because I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what I was walking into. I'm used to having control,
Hmm.
and to not have control and to be in such a vulnerable state, um, was foreign to me. That's
Yep.
uncomfortable. But I knew that I remember wanting to figure out my purpose, and I was like, I'm not I when I talked to Kenneth the next day, I said, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I said, but I'm not doing life insurance. I said, I
And
know
what
that's not
what
my
and what and
purpose.
what and what did I say? I was like, we
You're
already
like,
knew
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're like, that's what I wanted to hear. Like, you've
Yeah.
been waiting for me to
Yeah.
say that. And I said, I know I'm meant to help people. I don't know what that looks like, but I know that. And it's funny because I was just thinking about this. I was talking to my girlfriend the other day and I was telling her about my experience. And she brought up one of my past relationships, and he was verbally abusive. I mean, it did, he was definitely a narcissist for sure, but it did a lot of damage. I haven't been in a relationship since that relationship. And I was like, when she brought up his name, there was no emotion or reaction tied to
There we
it.
go.
And I was like, holy shit. I'm sitting here and I'm like, it is still working, because the whole thing is like, even after you do the ceremony, it continues to work. And it was like, in that moment, I was like, there is no attachment to someone, to that trauma that I experienced in that relationship. And
Yes.
that's been an ongoing battle for me, because
Here's a
I'm like,
question for
no.
you. Whenever you like, if you were to actively try to sit down right now and remember things he's done to you, can you even conjure it up?
Yeah, but it's like
It's different.
hard.
Is it? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
it's like
hard. It's like hazy. Like you can't. Like your brain's
I
like,
can't like
no.
pixelate it.
Yeah, it's like your
The
brain's like, no, we've already dealt with that stuff. Like you don't get to pull it back up again. We've already dealt with it. I'm sorry. Move along. There's nothing to see here. That's the way
yeah,
it feels like for me.
yeah. So and I've seen it in a few different scenarios. But that one's, I think, one that's been like the most like obvious and apparent in my life.
Hmm.
And even like with my dad, like talking with my dad, had a conversation with him. And instead of me just being like so fucking angry, I was like, okay, hey, dad, can you just like not do this when we're on the volleyball court? Because it really makes me feel like you're micromanaging me. Before, I was just eating up inside. He's going to listen to this too. He has no idea. I was eating up inside for like 3 weeks. Like, I don't even want to play volleyball with you because I don't want to be micromanaged. So mad. It was like, okay, I can just have a conversation and it's fine.
Yeah.
I would say today it's like I wake up and it's not going through the motions anymore. It's like I'm present in life today. Like I smile
You
today.
laughed on the phone. You
Yeah.
laughed on the phone with me went without me telling a joke. And I was like, wait a minute. I don't know what's happening here,
You're like,
but
what
she's
is this?
happy. She's happy. This is great. This is great. And, I think that, if there's anybody listening that is is in a place like Lexi or me, and you're looking for something, like reach out to either one of us and we can kind of talk about the experience a little bit one on one potentially, or, even maybe recommend you to the right shaman to
Yeah.
do something similar. Um, I do think it's just going to continue to pick up speed. I think you're probably going to see uh, states make it legal. I know that Colorado is on the cusp of making psilocybin legal. I know that Washington is too. I think you're going to probably see it more commonplace. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, it wasn't about like, uh, I guess, telling people about psychedelics, but more about the fact that like how much it's impacted both of us, sort of on a deeper level. But you told me you wanted to help people, and this right here is going to be helping people. And I
Yeah.
think, your story, the cool thing about our stories is nobody can take our stories away, right?
No.
Nobody can say, well, your story is fucking not true. Well, I mean, you can say it if you want to, but it doesn't make it any less true. And so when we have testimonials, not only from, a ceremony like this, but even our coaching. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle this back around. So this past week, after she did the ceremony, how many pounds did we drop?
Dropped 3 pounds.
Bingo!
And I hadn't trained. I had not trained in
Yep.
6 days when this happened. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, because
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
not being a psycho.
Kenneth actually kind of knows something, maybe
Yeah.
potentially. And I said to her in a very joking way, I was like, she called me. Well, she posted on social media, and I called her, and I was like, "Wow, this is incredible." I was like, "It's all happening because you're not insane anymore."
Yeah.
And so, and that's the
Yeah.
truth. And
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, and Laura can be, an advocate here too. When you stop being neurotic, when you stop trying to control everything, when you slow down and you take care of yourself to move in the right direction, that's when the scale moves in the right direction.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
scale's
Definitely,
not the only thing, everything changes.
yeah,
Yeah.
thinking that you're going to force your body to be healthy by doing all the things, right? Add more to your plate. Do more for everyone else. Get more specific. Look at your steps more, right? Like just get down to the nitty gritty. You're going to run yourself into the ground. Get a bigger shovel because that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You need to relax and you need to deal with your mental shit because there's a reason that you need to grab a bigger shovel. It's because you're not dealing with your shit. And this is one effective way that you guys have found to deal with that stuff. And it's amazing.
And I was going to tell you too, real quick, just to tag on to that. You were talking about tracking your steps and all that stuff. Laura, what was one of the things you got rid of?
Oh my God. Do you see? I don't have nothing. I'm naked. I
No
don't have
tracking
an
device.
Aura ring. I don't have a watch. Nothing. And I'm like,
Me too.
don't
Still have
give a fuck.
it. I'm not
So I
tracking
got
my steps, I
I
swear.
so I got rid of my Whoop, and I had my Whoop for 2 years, and I was religious about it. I thought like it was the gospel. It was going to tell me exactly when I needed to train, when I didn't need to train. I was meticulous about my HRV to a degree. I'm not as obsessive compulsive as a lot of people are, but I realized like for me, I just after these experiences of healing for me, I just didn't care anymore. I stopped looking at it. I stopped looking at it because it really didn't matter. I needed to feel the way I felt when I woke up. I didn't need to let a device determine what my mood was going to be that day or what I was going to do that day. I was going to listen to my body for the first time.
Well, and but
And
you bring up a good point though, because those devices are tools. It's
right,
just like
for healthy
counting
people.
macros, right? It's just like what we talked about at the beginning, Lexi, with you, where you were like, tell me what to eat, because I've never known how to eat intuitively. You can't do it until you use the tool to teach yourself to do it, right? So
Yep,
the nice thing was, Kenneth, is you had the tool, so you knew kind of what you were looking for. You needed to be able to reconnect to your body in
yep,
order to do it without the tool. And that's the
yep.
key.
And there's times all the time when I'm working with clients and they'll be like, this happened last week. They were like, well, I checked my weight yesterday and I checked it today and I'm going to check it tomorrow, and I'm going to check it the next day. And so far, it hasn't moved at all. And I don't really know why, but I'm doing all the things. I'm not stressed out. Everything's fine. I mean, it's going fine. And I'm like, hey, just do me a favor. Stop checking your weight, please, because you are literally going crazy about your weight. And I used to do this too. Austin, I doubt Austin will listen to this, but if he did, he'd laugh his ass off. So he has me check my blood sugar. And when I was in the most traumatic state that I was in, I check my blood sugar and I'm literally like on edge thinking it's going to be 110. It's going to be 110 and Austin's going to be disappointed because I'm not managing my stress. And I'm just fucking crazy town over here and I just can't do this anymore. So I was like, I just don't know what's going on with my blood sugar. I feel like I'm letting you down. And he literally, we're on a Zoom call together, and he's one of my closest friends. And he looks at me, he's like, "Hey, crazy guy, will you stop? Just stop. Just stop it. Quit being a nutcase." I'm like, "Okay, so am I just never going to do that again?" He's like, "No. When you get more stable, we might track that. It's a tool that we don't need right now. You need to work on some other things." So if you are obsessive compulsive over certain things that we're tracking as coaches, we're probably going to take that responsibility out of your hands. Um, and hell, the next thing you know, you might not have an Apple Watch on anymore, or you
Yeah.
know. And honestly, the more I figure out about what our society is about, the less connected I want to be to it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm super. Go ahead, Lexi.
I just wanted to say this real quick because I was thinking about it. With someone being in recovery, I do not advocate, for people that are in recovery that like, hey, this is the solution to all your problems. You know what I'm saying? Because like I did not do this lightly. I did
yeah,
this very intentionally. I did my homework on it. I talked to other people in recovery that have had experience doing this, So
hmm
this isn't like, oh, Lex was just like wanted a freebie. Like, no, this was kind of like, this was for me like life or death situation, you know?
yeah, hmm
So I did just want to say that because if there are people in recovery listening, like just because you're in a rut, you can get out of the rut. This was not a rut,
right,
Um,
exactly,
so that's all I wanted to say.
So,
yeah,
Lex, super
Yeah.
excited to watch you continue in your journey with Kenneth. And I know everyone listening is going to want to do that also. So, can you just let us know? I'm going to put it in the show notes too, but how can people follow your journey and get to know you better?
Well, I'm at the Fit Insurance Girl on Instagram.
which needs to
Um,
change. I don't know
I
what you're going
wish
to change
I
it
know.
to.
I've been trying to figure it out. I've been trying to brainstorm, and I'm like, I don't know what it's gonna be next. But that of now is my TikTok and my Instagram
Perfect.
um, handle. So we'll see what happens or what name I come up with. But yeah, I'm
Awesome.
excited too. I'm
Yeah.
excited. And I'm really grateful to be on here and just, I don't know, just getting to know like you, Laura, even better. I see you every week. So
Oh, thank
I
Yeah,
you.
love,
yeah.
so,
Kenneth,
no.
any last thoughts?
I'm really thankful that you are where you are, Lexi, and I'm proud of you. And you have exceeded my expectations more than you could imagine. And I can only imagine what you're going to do next. Like I'm really excited about your determination and where you are mentally. And I hope that uh, people are listening and that they have some takeaways here and you are helpful to them because that's really why we have the podcast. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a dual thing. We want our clients who don't always get to talk to us all the time to be able to have access to us and maybe pick our brains in sort of a way that isn't normal. Maybe it's not a topic that they're thinking about, but it's something that they may need to think about. And then on top of that, it's just can we reach more people and kind of educate people on what to do and how to approach things and really be the change that we want to see because Laura and I both are very different in the fact that we are mental health focused primarily, and then we are health focused from a physical standpoint secondarily, and then from a third standpoint, we're physique changing at that point. So I think that's what's going to make us, even better coaches, and we're all going to be successful for it. So,
Lexi, last
Yeah.
thoughts you want to leave people with? Anything, any big takeaway that you didn't say, or something you want to wrap up in a nice little bow for people?
Nice little bow. Um, you know, I guess it's more of just like if you're like struggling, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're struggling and like you don't know what to do, one, doctors are not always going to have the solution. And sometimes looking within, and really,
mhm.
really exploring the reflection, your reflection. Um, to me, that's been such a big part of me or part of my life that I neglected for so long, you know? And
Mhm.
then just being like open-minded and let fucking go.
Yeah,
Love it.
let go.
That's
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
There we go. Ladies and
It's
gentlemen, it
not.
was
It's no longer let's go. It's let
it's like
go.
all
yeah.
right. Hopefully, listeners, you got something out of the podcast. I know you did. If you did, though, go ahead and put it in the notes. We will drop everything in the show notes for you. Thank you for listening to episode 21. Lexi, you're amazing. Kenneth, as are you. Have a great week, everybody.